Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the leadership team tools and reports in BNI Connect. So what we're going to be doing is going through a lot of the functionality in BNI Connect that various leadership team positions will have access to and will be performing on a regular basis in BNI Connect. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. And that is that this call is a live presentation. You can ask questions as we're going through. We're going to be actually demonstrating things in the system, so I'll be showing you all these things live, but the call is being recorded. So it will be made available after the presentation today. It usually takes a day or two for me to get it uploaded to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Again, we have a BNI Connect Global channel on YouTube. I'll show you where that is in just a second. You can also find the recordings on the support site, which is support.bniconnect.com. Some caveats before we get started. Not all functions will be available to all people on the call today. BNI Connect is a highly flexible system in what people have access to. Obviously, as a system administrator, I personally have access to a lot of things in the system, but depending on how the permissions are set up in your area, you may or may not see everything that I'm showing you today. That being said, I'm going to be showing you guys a lot of processes without necessarily saying, this is what the vice president does, or this is what the president does, or this is what the chapter membership coordinator does, or the chapter director if you're from the UK, because a lot of areas have slightly different processes. For example, in most regions, the vice president or the membership coordinator will be the one that enters the POMS report on a weekly basis. In other regions, they've delegated that position or that process to another person in the chapter. So I'm going to show you a lot of things without necessarily saying so. In your role, it's your responsibility to do this. More of, this is the technology, this is BNI Connect, and here's how you do it if this is one of your responsibilities. For specific questions about who does what, please do check with your chapter director consultant or your executive director. You'll hear me say that a number of times, especially if you ask specific questions. Please always, always, always check with your chapter director consultant or your executive director before implementing any ideas, or if you have specific process-related questions. All right, here's just a couple of the things that we will be covering today, and then I'll exit out of this PowerPoint and go right into BNI Connect. We're going to be talking about the visitor process, how to enter and track visitors in BNI Connect. We're going to show you guys on the leadership team how you can very quickly and easily get an email list for your chapter to be able to communicate with them, how to enter a POMS report, the weekly POMS report, how to enter the speaker rotation, how to assign a mentor-mentee, how to enter an application if that's something that you do in your region, how to review pending applications, and also a quick glimpse at some of the important leadership team level reports that you might want to be familiar with. This call, usually the webinars go for about a half hour. This one will more than likely go for about 45 minutes worth of content. That being said, providing support and training is what I do all day, every day for BNI Connect. So I am willing to stay on these calls as long as a single person has questions. I will stay on this call until every single question is answered. All right, so hopefully you guys are ready to get started. So let me get out of this PowerPoint here. And let's take a look at BNI Connect. So now first things first, what I wanted to show you was the place that you'll be able to find the recordings after today's webinar. There's two ways you can do that. Either, first of all, go to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Again, that's youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. You will see a ton of videos up here, educational moments and all of the recorded webinars and things like that. You can also find them on the support site. And the way to get there is by clicking on this little question mark in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. If you click that question mark, it will take you over to the support site. You can see all of our upcoming webinars, and then you can see a section called Chapter Training and Documentation. And in here you'll find all of the recorded webinars listed month by month. So let's take a look. Let's go back here now. This is obviously the home screen. I'm not going to go too far into this as far as the online slips functionality, but this is where the online slips happen. Submitting an online slip is pretty straightforward. As a leadership team person, especially if you're the person that's going to be entering the weekly POMS reports, one thing I'll tell you is that the more of your chapter you can get to start doing the slips online in BNI Connect, the easier your job is going to be when it comes to reporting. The way the online slips work is when somebody submits a slip, so let's say that I submit a referral slip this week, and let's say I had a referral for Matt Baressa in my chapter, and it was a Tier 1 referral. I fill out the information, and I pass this referral. This referral has now already been recorded in a draft version of the POMS report for this week. So that's one less slip that I have to tally and count because it's already been entered. Now they still want to announce it at the meeting. We're still going to do door prizes, all of that stuff. But the more people that are entering these online, the less time you have to spend after the meeting sorting out piles of slips, counting them, and then inputting them into the spreadsheet. So that's really all of the stuff on this front page here is for a member's use. If we want to go a little deeper and look at the leadership team stuff, we're going to have to dig into some of the menus up here at the top. Now, a lot of people say, you know, I find it really, really confusing. I don't know where to go to do stuff. I don't know where to go to find stuff. Here's my way of remembering it. Here's a little hint for you. The network menu is going to be all of the social media functions. So that's where you're going to manage your connections. It's where you're going to do testimonials and things like that. The operations menu is where you're going to go to do stuff. And so it's really the input portion of BNI Connect. Reports is the output portion. So operations really is input, reports is output. So if I want to input a mentor-mentee pair, I want to input the POMS report, or I want to input the speaker rotation, the place that I'm going to find all of those things is under operations. If I want to get some statistics out, like how's my chapter doing, what are all the POMS results for the last 6 months, that would be a report to get the information back out. So let's go and take a look at the operations menu to see some of the stuff that we can input and do with the system. So I am on my training system, which is a little bit slower. You'll have to forgive me here. Let me switch over to the live system, which will be faster. I'm going to switch up to my Antarctica region here. So once we get to the operations menu, you'll see that there's a bunch of different options here. We have visitor management, meeting management, managing memberships, goals, the mentoring program, and creating emails. So the first thing I wanted to show you was some processes with managing visitors. Now, under the Manage Visitor, you'll see 4 different options. Now, the first 2 options here have to do with visitors after a meeting has taken place. So you can add a visitor if they've come to visit the chapter. But you can also do something that will help quite a bit with the visitor management process by registering a visitor before a chapter meeting. So that's where we can go in. If you talk to somebody, you've invited a visitor, and they say, yeah, you know what, I'd love to come and visit. You can actually enter them ahead of time. Now, the benefit to this is that they get an email confirming that they're registered for a meeting. It also means that you and the leadership team will be notified if a visitor has registered, so you can pre-welcome them to the meeting. If your members or the visitors are registering themselves, it also helps your whoever's doing the visitor entry because all the information will already be in the system, so it's a little bit less typing for them to do. So let's say that I have a visitor that said that they want to come to a meeting. I can go in and register a prospective visitor. I just need to basically fill out the form. I can choose their profession, I can choose their specialty, what date they'll be visiting, and you'll notice it only allows for future dates. And let's say this is John Smith from Smith Co. And I can put the address, the phone number, and the email address. And click Submit. Now this visitor is registered for an upcoming meeting. Again, this visitor now has received an email saying that they're confirmed for that meeting, and the leadership team, the director consultant, and all the visitor hosts will get a similar message saying, by the way, you have somebody coming to your chapter. Now that's before a chapter meeting. After a chapter meeting, what you want to make sure that you're doing is recording the visitors that attended. So if you've been registering your visitors ahead of time, you want to go in and make sure that you're marking them as having attended. You don't have to enter all the information from scratch. And we do this by going to Manage Registered Visitors. So here I can do a search and find all the visitors that were registered for upcoming meetings. Now, some of these visitors never showed. So, for example, Jeremy Bass here was registered to visit on August 2nd, and they never showed. Well, I can always go in and remove them from my registration database by deleting that prospective visitor. Now, for the ones that did show up, for example, Fred Sprocket, he was registered to visit a couple of weeks ago. He did show up, and I want to make sure that I go in. I can edit his record, and I now have the option to show him as having attended the meeting. Once I select that, I also get the option of whether or not to add this person to the POMS reports. Now, there's reasons when you add a visitor to the POMS report, it will go and give the person that invited the visitor a 1 in their visitor column of the POMS report. Now, the vice president or whoever is entering the POMS reports will be able to check that out beforehand to make sure that it was valid. The rest of this is just to go through and make sure that we fill out the rest of the form here. We can choose whether or not to send the follow-up email. And click Submit. Now this visitor will be put in for credit in the POMS report, and they'll move out of the registered visitors database and into the regular visitors database. Now, if the person didn't pre-register, you can also go in and just click the Add Visitor button. And this will put in a visitor that is visited that did not pre-register. And you'll notice it's the same form for the most part that we had before. Once you start collecting a visitor database, besides putting that information into the POMS report, it's great because it eases the process of being able to go back and follow up with your visitors and to run reports and other things on your chapter's visitor database. Robert does have a question. He says, is there a report under the report menu that shows the chapter performance compared to its goals, or is that only under the operations menu? So that particular, if you're entering your goals in BNI Connect, then yes, the only report for that is to view the chapter goals. That's here under the operations menu. So hopefully that answers your question, Robert. All right, so for more information on the visitor process, I can go into very great detail with that one. There is a manual available for that, and you can also check out, we do have a visitors webinar that will be happening a little bit later this month. Again, click on that question mark, which will take you over to the support site, and I go in depth into the visitors process. Oops, that's September. That will be Monday, October 20th at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. We have a question. Christine said, if we registered and had a visitor that said they wanted to visit again next week, would we re-enter them the following week as another visitor? So when it comes to pre-registering, yes, I would say you can re-register them a second time, and that way they will get all the email reminders. But for, let's say, a visitor that said, oh yeah, I'd really like to come to the chapter next week, but I can't make it, or my child is sick, or it was bad weather, or I'm not feeling well, you can re-register them. After you've registered them, you go to the Manage Registered Visitors. You do the search, and for the visitor that you'd like to change, go to Edit, and you can go in and change their visit date. So let's say they said they wanted to come next week instead. I could change that visit date, and they'll be re-registered to visit that meeting instead. So does that answer your question, Christina? All right. Kelly says, is there a report for registered visitors that did not show up to use for follow-up? And yes, under the Reports menu. So if I go to Reports, down all the way at the bottom, there is a visitor registration report, which will show you the upcoming visitors, and you can change this date range to anything you'd like. So I can see all the visitors, let's say, for the next month. And there's also a visitor not attended report, which is essentially the reverse. It'll show all visitors that were registered for previous meetings that were not marked as having attended. So these are the ones that you might want to follow up with to invite them back or reschedule them for another meeting. So does that answer your question? Excellent. Owen says, can all members enter visitors or just the leadership? So all members, now here's where I'll say the defaults in the system are that all members have access to these visitor registration reports, and all members should have access to the Register a Prospective Visitor. Generally speaking, only leadership team and visitor hosts can actually go in and add visitors after they've attended or to manage the visitors afterwards. So does that answer your question, Owen? Christine says, does every member of the BNI group see the email that a visitor is registered? That email that the visitor is registered goes to the president, the vice president, the secretary treasurer, or again, if you're here from the UK, it goes to the chapter director, the membership coordinator, and the secretary, as well as the chapter's director consultant and all of the visitor hosts. So no, the entire chapter does not get it, but quite a few people do get that email. Suzanne says, can the emails be customized for your chapter? So the emails are customized in the sense that they have all of your chapter's information in them, but they can't be customized with your own verbiage. That's done at a regional level, and it's the same for all chapters in the area. So if you have some specific things that you think would benefit all of the chapters, please do talk with your executive director who can make those changes. Sheila says, should a visitor who visits more than once be counted only once on the palms? Absolutely, Sheila. You should only count the visitor the first time that they've attended. The reason for this is that if you are especially using the traffic lights, it does affect your conversion ratio for the traffic lights, since the same visitor being entered twice into the palms report would effectively halve your conversion ratio. All right, so I think I got all the questions on visitors. And again, we go very much in depth on that webinar specifically for visitors. So the next thing I wanted to show you guys is how to email your chapter. A lot of people especially in leadership team positions, you'll need to be able to get a message out to your chapter in order to maybe tell them of an upcoming event or to remind them of something going on that's happening in the chapter. To do that, you'll notice Create Email. Under Create Email, there's a couple of different options. The very first option says Email My Chapter. If I click on Email My Chapter, what this does is it gives me all of the, well, really the most current email distribution list for my chapter. So I can just take that, I can copy it, I can open up my own email program. I happen to use Microsoft Outlook. I do recommend, whenever possible, using the BCC line. And by the way, contrary to popular belief, you don't have to have anybody in the to line. They can all be in this BCC line. And you just type your email and you send it. That's it. No more guessing if you have all the new members or if the list had old members on it. Very quick way to get an email list. By the way, if you haven't checked it out before, also check out the visitor invitation. This is a way to send out a very quick invitation to somebody to come and visit your chapter. All right, the next thing on my list to show you is how to enter a POMS report. Generally speaking, this is done by a lot of times the vice president or the membership coordinator on a weekly basis following the meeting. So to do that, that's going to be something under meeting management. There's two options regarding POMS here, so view POMS summary and enter POMS. View POMS summary would allow you to view a single POMS report for that was entered at some point in the past. Enter POMS would be to enter a weekly POMS. So let's say my meeting has ended and I need to enter a POMS report. What I'm going to do is click on Meeting Management and then enter POMS. The first thing that you'll see when you go to enter your POMS report is you'll see a list of any visitors that the visitor host added during the week that you do need to approve before they're put into the POMS officially. So this is letting me know that Fred Sprocket was entered as a visitor, and Alfred E. Newman is going to be getting credit for it in that week's POMS reports for the 24th. I can see that it was myself that did that data entry as well, so you can see who entered the person. At this point, I can either say, yes, I would like to add that to the POMS, or no, I can reject it. It will not delete the visitor, but it will uncheck the box basically saying add the person to POMS. If you need to make changes to the visitor, let's say it was the wrong week or something like that, you can click on the visitor's name and that will open up the record. And let's say that the visit date wasn't actually the 24th, they had come on the 17th. I could make that change or change any of the other details and resave it. And now I can see that the date of the visit was the 17th. If I need to double check to see if it was already entered into the POMS report, I could click this link, have a view of the POMS report, and I can see that, let's say, Alfred E. Newman, where is he? Was he already credited with a visitor? And no, he wasn't, so I should feel okay adding this person to the POMS report, so I'm going to click yes. So I've gone through all my visitors now, and now I can enter the weekly POMS. I do that by choosing the meeting date, and let's say that we meet on Wednesdays and we met this morning, so I'm going to choose this morning's meeting and click on Enter POMS. This will show me my chapter roster. Now, if unfortunately up in Antarctica, they're not using the online slips much yet. So there's nothing in this POMS report yet. So what I need to do is count up all the slips, take attendance. Now, I always get the question, what does POMS stand for? POMS stands for present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. So the different statuses for attendance at the meeting. Now, RG, I, and RGO. RG stands for referrals given. Same thing for RR, referrals received. The I and the O, the I is an inside referral and the O is an outside referral. The difference between the two is that an inside referral is, for example, if I'm in this chapter and I needed to use the services of Alfred E. Newman, that would be an inside referral. So he would be providing a service directly to me, and I would be paying him for those services. So really, the referral stayed within the membership of the chapter between two members. An outside referral, on the other hand, is if I introduce somebody to Alfred E. Newman. So it could be my brother, it could be my uncle, it could be a client or a colleague of mine, but I've gone outside of the chapter to introduce somebody to Alfred E. Newman. That would be an outside referral. And of course, there's always two sides to a referral. There's the referral giver and the referral receiver. So if Roger Dodger referred himself to Alfred E. Newman, that would be a referral given, one for Roger and one received for Alfred. Now, on the other hand, if Art Garfunkel referred his uncle, oops, hold on, that was referral received inside. If Art Garfunkel referred his uncle to Bob Jones, that would be a referral given outside. And for Bob Jones here, a referral received outside. Obviously, V is for visitors. One-to-ones are the one-to-one meetings. Thank you for closed business is when a referral has closed and you're thanking them for generating revenue. And here in the U.S., we use CEUs, which are the chapter education units. In the UK, I know that you record testimonials here. So basically, you go through all your slips, you fill out all that information, and when you're ready, you can submit that POMS report. If you'd like to, you could also, before you submit it, take any notes about that meeting. If you have only gotten through half of the POMS report and dinner is ready and you need to continue this later, that's fine. Just click the Save as Draft. It'll save everything you've done so far, and you'll be able to return to it later. If you completely mess it up and you want to start all over again, you can click the Discard POMS. Now, if your chapter doesn't meet for a week, let's say my chapter happens to meet on Thursdays. Thanksgiving is always on a Thursday. We're not going to have a meeting that week. I would want to make sure that I go in and I mark that meeting as a holiday, which will close that meeting out and remove it from the statistics. I can then click Submit POMS, and now this POMS has been submitted. I can review it quickly. If I need to make any changes, I could also click this Unlock button. All right, so I have a couple of questions popping up here. Robert says, what about a sub that has never attended before? Can that be counted as a visitor? So, Robert, I would check with your director consultant, your executive director, on that one as to what constitutes a valid visitor for a chapter meeting. I can tell you in my region, we do not count a sub as a visitor. They're either a substitute or they are a visitor. But again, that's a local policy. Let's see, Christine says, so when a visitor comes for 2 weeks and we only enter them once, can we delete the visitor if they were entered twice? Yes, you can delete that second visitor if you'd like to. The important thing is that even if you enter them twice, you want to make sure that you only put them in the POMS report once. Terry says, if a member is no longer a member and removed from the roster, why do they continue to appear in the POMS report? So here's the deal with the POMS report. So when I go to, again, I go back to Operations Chapter, and when I go to create a new POMS report, and I put this date in, if a POMS report wasn't there before, it generates the roster for the POMS based on the current roster. So that means that, let's say that a member has dropped from the chapter, but they haven't processed that drop in the regional office yet. then they're essentially still in BNI Connect, and they're created with that roster. The same thing as if you get a new member that comes and joins the chapter, but they haven't entered that application into BNI Connect yet, even though they've been at the meeting for the last couple of weeks, or maybe they were even inducted already, they won't appear on the POMs until that paperwork has been processed by the regional office. Does that make sense, Terry? Does that answer your question? So Terry, let me know if I can clarify. All right, so we have a couple of additional questions here. What about when you do refer business to another BNI member in another chapter? Yes, so if I was to refer business to somebody in another chapter, let me just pull up a POMS report here. So let's say I need to make some changes to this POMS report. I'm going to unlock this POMS report after I click View. So we have a couple of questions here about thank you for closed business and one-to-one. So it's the same thing with one-to-ones. One-to-ones, if Chuck did a one-to-one with Jacob, I would put a 1 in his column and a 1 in Jacob's column. Now, thank you for closed business. Again, let's say that Alfred E. Newman, he closed some business. It was a referral that Bob Jones had given him a couple of weeks before. He wants to thank him for generating that business, so he submitted a slip for that. And let's say it was $10,000, so we're going to put a thank you for closed business for $10,000 under Bob Jones's column. So hopefully that is for thank you for closed business and for one-to-ones. So Terry, if they're not on the roster, and it has already been processed by the office, then they shouldn't be appearing on the POMs. But I'll tell you what, after the webinar today, if you can shoot me an email with an example of this, somebody's name, for example, let's troubleshoot this one-on-one together and see why they're still appearing on the roster. So support@bniconnect.com. Support@bniconnect.com. All right? Excellent. So the other question is, with an outside of the chapter referral, the best way to do that is to make sure that you're entering that as an online slip, and because it does need to be input in both of the POMS reports, the POMS report of the receiving or giving chapter and then the other chapter. But yes, if that was done outside the chapter, then the referrals given and the referrals received columns will not necessarily match up, and that's okay. Now to check for the slips that were entered online, there is a button here that says Slips Audit Report. And here we can see that these were a couple of online slips that were entered that week. And you can see the details of those. And there's that visitor that I had put as attended. So Pim says, is it possible to put your own one-to-ones in so the members fills it themselves? And yes, you can do that through the home screen. You can put your own one-to-ones. Nancy says, what dollar amount should we be putting in the thank you for closed business, the total sale amount or the commission profit? There is a guide for that on the support site. Generally speaking, it is basically the gross commission or the gross profit to the company. So for example, if I was a real estate agent and I sold a home, it wouldn't necessarily be let's say $300,000 for the house, but that whatever 3, 4, 5% that went to my real estate company. And that doesn't necessarily even mean my personal profit. That would be the profit or the amount that the company itself charged for it, so to speak. Now, there's a ton of different permutations on that one, but that is the general overview. If you have a thank you for closed business or a from a past business, let's say a past member, an alumni, that would go into the BNI column. So hopefully that answers your question there, Nina. And Scott, I think that was the same question that you had there as well. Kathleen says absences, substitutes are listed as S. Is that correct? And yep. So present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. All right. So I'm going to come back to some of these very specific thank you for closed business questions at the end. So we're already at 1:30, and we still have quite a few things to go through today. So let me go back and show you a couple of other things here. So I'm going to go back to operations chapter. All right, here's a couple of much easier ones that I'm going to show you guys, and that is how do you enter a speaker rotation? So entering the speaker rotation, that one is also going to be under meeting management, and we're going to go to view edit speakers. To enter a speaker, we just choose the meeting date that we want to see speakers from to make sure that there isn't any overlap. And right now we don't have any upcoming speakers, so I'm going to go ahead and assign a speaker. I choose the date that they're going to be speaking. And yes, you can only choose future dates. I choose the speaker and the topic that they'll be speaking on. Now, once that speaker is put in, the benefits of adding a speaker are twofold. The first of which is that Larry and the secretary treasurer of the chapter will get an email reminder about the speaking date. So Larry will get an email 6 days before the chapter meeting and 3 days before the chapter meeting, reminding him that he is speaking that week. The secretary treasurer will get the same reminder 3 days before the meeting. The other benefit is that on your chapter website, which is hosted through BNI Connect, you will see a list of all the upcoming speakers. So it's a very public place to be able to check the speaker rotation. And it's also indexed by Google, so that's a little bit more visibility on the internet. If Larry can't speak this week, he needs to change his meeting, I do need to delete him and add him back in under a new week. And that's how to add a speaker. Now, if you happen to be a mentor coordinator, assigning a mentor and a mentee is pretty straightforward as well. We just go to the mentoring program and we click on Assign a Mentor and Mentee. We would click on the date that the mentor-mentees are going to start meeting, which is also going to be when they'll start receiving the emails letting them know what they should be talking about on a weekly basis. We would just choose who the mentor is going to be. So let's say Harvey Keitel is going to be mentoring Joe Slow as the mentee, and we're going to have the emails arrive on the 10th. And that will continue for 8 weeks. And just to give you a view of what those emails look like, they will receive an email, as I said, on a weekly basis. They do both receive the same email, but for example, week 1, they will get this email letting them know that here are the responsibilities, here's what you're going to be doing, here's what you should be talking about, and then, for example, week 2, they'll get another email, and these are the topics to discuss this week. And then each week, they'll also get a packet of information with some information to go over and to teach in the Mentor-Mentee program. All right, so let's see, we have a couple of questions that just popped up. Robin said, I'm sorry, I just heard the last part of that. What's indexed by Google? Well, all of the public websites are indexed by Google. So, you know, all of these regional websites, but also all of the chapter websites. So every chapter does have a website available to them that they can customize and kind of make their own. But since this page is indexed by Google, that's one more opportunity that all of these speakers' names are appearing up there on the internet. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see, Kathleen says our chapter has a 10-minute and we do a 2-minute presentation by one member on a topic of the quarter. I've added both of these to the report, so I'm loving this feature, and I have added it as a 10 or 2-minute speech. That's awesome. Excellent. I'm glad that is working well for you. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to show you, and this is something that not all regions do, but for the regions that do process applications at the chapter level, here's how to enter an application into BNI Connect. The way to enter a new application is to go to Manage Memberships, and you should see an option here for Enter New Application. If I click on Enter New Application, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to search for previous members. So this will always be to, if they were a previous member before, we want to try to recover that historical data. So we want to make sure that we're getting, you know, all their old profile information, so we don't have to fill it all out again. And they'll have the same username when they go back in. It'll also retain their training history and their POMS reports and things like that. Otherwise, it's going to end up creating a new record, and then those aren't connected anymore, so they essentially lose some of that history. So we always want to do a search. So let's say I'm going to be adding Joe Smith. If I know his email address, I can type it in there. If not, I can click email address unknown. Now it does bring up a bunch of Joe Smiths. If I recognize the right person, I can then click the little red head next to his name, which will open up an application to convert this person to a member. Now, if this isn't the right person and the right person isn't in the list, I would just click Next, and now I can search against visitors. And it looks like I do have a Joe Smith that was a visitor to the chapter. If this is the right person, again, I can click the little red head here. And the great thing is the application will be mostly filled out with their information for me already. Now, if that still isn't the right person or you still can't find anybody, then you just click on Enter New Member. And from here, we can put in when they applied to the chapter. Going to make sure that we choose the right chapter and all the rest of the information. If you notice, this is very similar to the visitor information that we had before. And then we have to make some choices if they're going to be shown on the public website, etc. We're going to choose the payment type. He decided to pay in cash and rolled quarters, and whether it is a 1-year or a 2-year membership, and we click Submit. And now that application has been entered into BNI Connect. If we have another one to enter, we can enter that now. Otherwise, we can go back to Operations Chapter. If you'd like to check to see if your regional office has processed that member yet, you can go to Manage Memberships and look at View Pending Applications to see which applications are still in the hopper and whether or not they've received the money up at your regional office yet. All right, so those are the things under the operations menu that I was going to show you today. So let's see, we had a couple of questions here. Terry says, if previous leadership didn't enter this info for the mentors and mentees, we have new members and they've been proceeding for a few weeks through the mentor-mentee program. Can I enter the info now? And if so, what will appear? Unfortunately, we can't backdate a mentor-mentee relationship, and it's because of that whole email campaign. It would throw the email timing off on that. You could put them in now, but they would be getting the emails from the start. So they would start getting the first one, and then next week they get week 2. So it's up to you if you'd like to enter them in. I would check with the mentor-mentees. They may find the information helpful, or may give them something else to talk about, even if they have been meeting for a couple of weeks already. So, but that's kind of a personal preference there. Rebecca says, what would you enter for a sponsor when a visitor has come to your group by finding it online? I would choose I believe you can choose BNI as a sponsor for that, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so we're at about 45 minutes in. We are going to go over the reports now. So I do see a couple more questions about specific things on the POMS report. I'm going to come back to that after we review some of the reports for people that might have to leave at a specified time. All right, so obviously to go to the reports, I'm going to go to Reports Chapter. And here is really where we're going to find all of our reports in the system, so all the statistical data. Now I'm going to switch back over to my personal chapter so you have some real data to work with here. My Antarctica chapters don't really produce much revenue or anything. So you'll see that there is a boatload of reports here, so you can scroll through them. I'm not going to go through all of them today. Feel free to click through them and try them out. They're all quite useful and have a bit of information in them. The ones that I think are going to be the most important to you on the leadership team. So the first one I'll show you is the chapter roster report. And this is a pretty straightforward report, just showing you your, chapter roster. But aside from having all the member information down here, along with their company name and a quick view of the POMS report, what's good about this report is all of this information at the top. Here you can make sure that, like for example, if your visitor host is saying, well, I can't enter the visitors because I don't have that permission. The first place I would go to check is to make sure that they're actually assigned as a visitor host for your chapter. And if they're not assigned as a visitor host, then you want to make sure you talk to your director consultant or your executive director, your regional office, to have the person assigned. Perhaps they hadn't gone through training yet or some other reason. But this is where you can check to make sure that your leadership team is complete and which other people you would need to put into those positions. Also, if you need to get in touch with your director consultant, I keep saying a lot of times on today's webinar, please talk to your director consultant. This is where you can find your director consultant's phone number right here on the roster report. Right below the roster report, and this is probably one for the vice presidents, the secretary treasurers, the membership coordinators, but the membership dues report is where you'll spend quite a bit of time. If you click go on the dues report, this will show you, again, all of the members, their names, but the most important column here is the one all the way to the right, and that's their renewal date or their due date. Now you'll notice the top 3 positions will have what's called a term plus status, and that means that your dues are being compensated while you're serving in one of those top 3 roles. And then it will sort the rest of the list by upcoming due dates. So you'll know that these people are people that you need to make sure you have their renewal applications in for right away. And these are the next people that will be coming up in December. And further out, for example, if you do a 6-month review in your chapter, you may want to be looking at people that are up for renewal in April. It will also give you a summary at the bottom of people that have left in the last 60 days, as well as members that are new in the past 30 days and members that are in a late status. So all that information is there. Of course, you can print these reports out if you would like to. And also any of the fields at the top that you see are underlined, you can sort by that particular column. So if I wanted to sort this by first name instead of by due date, I would click the first name column, and now my list is sorted by first name. The summary POMS report is your statistical report for the chapter. Now, a couple of things about this report that I'll show you is you can change these dates to anything you want them to be. So by default, it's going to show you the last 6 completed months of statistics. But let's say that I want to go back and I want to look at the statistics for the last 5 years. I can go back. I just need to change this drop down. Let's say I'm going to go back to January 1st of 2010. I can also go through this current month if I'd like to, through today. I do need to make a choice whether or not I want to list the dropped members or not. Now, the totals will always be complete, but it's whether or not you're going to hide the names of the dropped members on the report. So if I choose to leave this unchecked, it will just show me people that are currently active in the chapter. If I uncheck this, it'll show me every member that was ever a member of the chapter during that time. And again, this is just a summary of all of those weekly POMS reports that you do, again, on a weekly basis. And just a reminder, the totals will be the real totals for the chapter, not just for the people that are listed. For the membership committee people and the vice presidents, the people that are going to be reviewing memberships, one report that I find really helpful is the personal POMS report. And the personal POMS report is going to allow you to look at a single member in the chapter to see how they were doing. So let's say that we're coming up on a six-month review, or somebody's just submitted their renewal information and we want to review their membership. Let's say I can choose myself from the list, and I'd like to see for the last year, September 2013. What this does is it isolates this one person in the POMS report, and I can see on a week-by-week basis what this person has done. It also gives me a summary of their attendance, any members they've sponsored, and any trainings they've attended in that time period. So this is a great way to quickly review a single person's membership. For the vice presidents, there is a specific vice president report where you can look at all of the POMS reports together for a single month on a week-by-week basis. So if I'd like to look at all of the individual POMS reports for, let's say, September, this allows me to look at them all side by side, week by week. And the Cumulative VP report allows me to do that month by month for a total of 6 months. So I could, for example, look at the POMS report for April through September. All right, we already looked at a couple of the reports earlier, but there is the visitor registration report, as well as the not attended report. There's also a visitor report if you'd like to see all of the visitors that have been entered for your chapter, and the chapter traffic lights report if you utilize the chapter traffic lights in your region. All right, so what I'd like to do now is to open it up for questions. Again, it did take a little bit longer than it usually does to go through. I think that's because we got hung up on the POMS report a little bit with a bunch of questions, but I would like to start answering all of your questions now. So if you could start inputting any questions that you have, and again, I am happy to stay until every last question is answered. So let's get started. So Dave says, when I create a new status report in, say, Excel, how can I drag that into an email? So let's say, I mean, that's more of an email function because you're not sending emails directly out of BNI Connect. You're just getting the email addresses. But that is one thing that you can do. For example, if you wanted to email out your, like one thing that I used to do when I was a president is I would email out all of the registered visitors to my chapter. So I could go in and pull this report, let's say, for the registered visitors list, and I'm going to make sure I get some people here. So let's say I have this prospective visitor report, and I want to let my chapter know about all of these visitors that are registered. So what I would do is I would take this list here, and I'd probably export without headers, which means that it's not going to include all this information up here at the top, but it will include all of this information. Now I could then open up that download in Excel. And here's the Excel file. And I can see all the information here. So getting this into an email, if you're using something like, let's say, Microsoft Outlook, the easiest thing to do is just highlight this information, right-click and choose Copy. And then I'd have my email here, and I would just paste it. And now I have this in the email that I could send out to the chapter. I could then go and grab the addresses and paste those into the email as well, and then I could send that out. So does that answer your question, Dave? All right, excellent. So Pim had asked earlier, is it possible to put in your own one-to-ones? Yes, and again, that's the online slips. So that's back on the home page. So we do encourage all members to enter their own slips on a weekly basis. If I wanted to submit a one-to-one slip, I would click on Submit One-to-One. I would choose the person that I met with this week. I would choose the location. I could type in the topics of conversation and the date that we met. And then this will go into the POMS report. Mike will get a credit for it. I will get a credit for it. And the beauty is only one person does need to put that in. If Mike now goes and tries to put in a one-to-one in the same day, he will get a message saying one has already been entered. Does that answer your question, Pim? All right, let's see. Brett says, what if you give a referral to someone in the chapter and they leave the chapter before they complete the work? Can we still get credit for the amount of the referral? So referrals, as far as inputting referrals, we can only track the referral while the person is active in the list as far as inputting the referrals. Now, the thank you for closed business, if they left the chapter and you know that it closed, in order to get that marked on your thank you for closed business, you would have to ask them to either come in and submit a thank you for closed business slip on paper or submit it on their behalf to your vice president if you know that it closed. But does that answer your question? There'd be no direct way to do it here. All right, let's see. Christine says, thank you for closed business. What if the company receives a fee for the loan application and the rep gets commission? Can we enter both together? That, again, usually it is interpreted as the total gross receipts for that sale. So not necessarily what you personally make, but yes, the money that the rep's commission plus the company fee or commission on top of that. So, we're trying to track the amount of money that was generated in total, not necessarily how much money you personally made on it, if that makes sense. Suzanne said, what is the best way to print a POMS report? Mine always comes out on 2 pages and not very neatly either. So the best way to do that is through the POMS summary report. So you go to Summary POMS Report, choose your date range, and then click Print. That would be the best way to print a POMS report, and you can just run the report for 1 week if you need to. Now, if it's taking too much space or taking too much, it's too big, you don't like the format of it, again, my number 1 recommendation, if you want full total control over your printing, what size and the fonts and everything else, just click Export Without Headers. This will bring it up in Excel or Numbers or whatever program you use for spreadsheets. And at this point, you can go in and make it bigger, make it smaller, force it to fit on 1 page. And, Excel will give you so many different options that would allow you to, for example, force this to 1 page, fit sheet on 1 page, for example. So that would be the best way, I would say, to make sure that you have full control over the printing. Sheila says, is there training guidelines available for mentors? That would be in your own personal region. The best thing to do is to check your event calendar or check with your director consultant. Different regions have different trainings that are available for the various positions. Some of those trainings are online, some of them are in person. Some of them you can accomplish just by having a one-to-one with your director consultant. So hopefully that helps, Sheila. Gail says, will you go over DART reports? Gail, I'm not sure what the DART reports are. I do not believe that the DART report is a BNI Connect report. That might be something that is produced locally in your region, unless it's a different name for an existing report that I'm not 100% sure on or I'm not aware of. So, Gail, if you want to clarify, I'd be happy to try to answer that. Let's see, Nina says, now we know how to enter the report, but how do we print it for our meeting? So again, I think I just answered that one, Nina. If you have a follow-up question, just let me know. Let's see, Robin says, is there a way to get the traffic lights for each individual as opposed to the chapter that you showed us? Right now, no. The traffic lights in the system stop at the chapter level traffic lights. So the chapter level traffic lights are available. You could go in and choose the month, and this will show you all of the chapters in your region and what the traffic light scores are. The member level traffic lights are not available yet. We're hoping that they'll become available at some point in the relatively near future, but it has not been approved yet for programming. So again, just the chapter level lights. I think that's the same question that you had, Kathy. Let's see, Nancy says, if Joe has a one-to-one with Bob, but they each record it on different weeks, are they getting duplicate credit? So the trigger to that is as long as they're honestly reporting it for the same date of the one-to-one. So if you recall, I entered a one-to-one for Michael Paulino in my chapter just a few minutes ago for yesterday. So if I choose Michael again, and it doesn't matter what I put for the location or the topic of conversation, but as long as the pair and the date match, it will throw up a warning saying that there's already a one-to-one that matches this. It doesn't matter if Mike goes in to enter that 3 weeks from now or whether or not it is happening on the same day. If it conflicts with the same member on the same day, it won't let you, well, it'll let you put it in if you really, really want to, but it will give you a warning. Does that answer your question, Nancy? Megan says, how can we see who has logged in to Thank You for Closed Business under our name? And Megan, Thank You for Closed Business is designed to be anonymous in the system. So we can't see who is the one that's submitting the slip. The only way we could find out who has given you that Thank You for Closed Business is if they stand up at the meeting and they announce it, or if they let you know that they have given it. The reason we do this is that, the why behind it. is so that everybody can participate with Thank You for Closed Business. There are quite a few professions out there, lawyers, doctors, health professionals, or just simply people that don't want you to know exactly how much they charge or make on a transaction, that if you were able to tie the two pieces of that transaction together, they would no longer be able to participate. So it is designed to be anonymous and not be able to find that information out in the system. Does that help to explain, Megan? All right, Kathleen says, so only one one-to-one can be entered per day for a person. If a person meets with two of the members, one would need to be entered per day. No, I mean, you can put a second one-to-one in with the same person, or if I had 4 one-to-ones today with different people, that won't throw up a conflict. And even if I have 2 one-to-ones with Michael in the same day, I can override that and say, yes, I do want to enter that in. It's just a warning message to give you the option, letting you know that it appears that one's already in the system. But you can absolutely override that. Suzanne says, are traffic light reports available by the total year? I seem to only get 1 month at a time. And yes, that is correct. You can only get 1 month at a time for the traffic lights. So Gail has said, the Secretary's Treasurer sends the DART report to the region, which is the members renewing, new members, members dropping. So again, yeah, Gail, that is a specific regional report system that your particular area has developed to help to manage that part of the process. That is not something that's directly in BNI Connect. Let's see, Nancy says, when I'm entering weekly POMs as VP and receive slips on different weeks, one-to-one, are difficult to control, right? Not necessarily. The one-to-ones will, all of that activity, just like you're entering, like we traditionally always done the paper slips, all of that activity gets input into that week's POMS report. So even if right now, if I put in a one-to-one slip for something that happened 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, that's going to go into this week's POMS report, even if it happened a long time ago. Just as if I had not been at my BNI meeting, let's say for a week or two, and finally turned in the paper slip. So it's the same with the electronic slips. Does that make sense, Nancy? Does that answer your question? See, Christine says, when I am reporting referrals to the group, do I add up all 4 columns? What I would say is to add up referrals. I mean, it kind of depends how you want to report it. I would probably add up the referrals given and referrals received columns. Suzanne says, I'm still a bit confused on Thank You for Closed Business. For example, Bob thanks Mary for giving him $10,000 worth of business. The $10,000 goes under Bob as his income. No, it goes to Mary as the giver. So Thank You for Closed Business is celebrating the giver of the person that generated the revenue. So this Bob would be thanking Mary for $10,000. The $10,000 would go under Mary's Thank You for Closed Business. Again, we're keeping track of how much money people generate, not the amount of money they've necessarily made in BNI. So hopefully that helps, Suzanne. Yep. Again, we're celebrating the giver's part of giver's gain. All right, Janine, you had a question. Can we enter meeting notes? What do you mean by meeting notes? You can enter just on a singular meeting as, let's say, the vice president, a couple of notes about that meeting right onto the POMS report sheet. So the meeting notes report, okay, so I love this report, by the way. I find this to be it's a very simple report, but I think it's a very useful report. So if I go to Reports chapter, the Meeting Notes report, what this report was designed to do was to be able to have your members take notes during the meeting. In other words, one of the best ways that we can increase the number of referrals that we're able to give is to make sure that we're paying attention to what people are asking for during their weekly presentations. So all this report is a list of the members, their company, and a place to take notes. So if you print this out, you can print out one copy for your whole chapter and distribute it at the meeting, and they can take notes during the meeting. Now, they don't get saved in BNI Connect, but I'll tell you one thing that we do in our chapter, and that is on a weekly basis, we enter this into a spreadsheet, which we then distribute to the chapter. So we actually pass around one blank copy. Everybody puts in their specific referral. One person is kind enough to type it all out into this Excel spreadsheet that I just exported, and they email it out to the chapter. And that way everybody gets a reminder of the specific referrals that people are asking for on a weekly basis. But again, they aren't saved in BNI Connect. It's just a way to keep notes offline, so to speak. Owen says, how do we track renewal business? So tracking renewal business, again, is the same way as inserting a regular thank you for closed business. So let's say I would submit a thank you for closed business slip, and I would just make sure that I put in the repeat business here under the checkbox. So does that make sense, Owen? Does that help? And I think that was the last question that I have listed here. So what other questions? I'm happy to answer any additional question. I know a lot of people had to leave already, but again, this whole thing is being recorded. If you want to come back to it later, if you do need to leave right away, or if you have more questions, please, I'd love to answer those questions. Just a reminder that you can find just about all of this on the support site. Click on the question mark up here in the upper right-hand corner. That'll bring you to the support site. Or let's say that you'd like to teach your chapter how to do the online slips. If you click on the little question mark in front of just about anything in BNI Connect, this will take you to that particular help topic. So let's say I want to show my chapter how to submit referral slips. Click on this question mark here. That will take you to this article. There's a video about how to enter the slips. There's a step-by-step process as well. So hopefully you find that helpful. Maria says, does this count as a CEU? Yes, absolutely. Make sure that you submit a CEU slip for this. Give yourself the 1 credit for a BNI webinar here and click submit. So yes, absolutely, this counts as a CEU if you are tracking CEUs in your area. Let's see, Kathleen said, awesome, second attendance and more learned. Well worth repeating these courses. Thank you. Suzanne says, one more question on thank you for closed business. If a former BNI member is thanked for closed business, where do you record the amount? And again, if you're doing this online and through the online slips, you'll notice at the bottom there is 2 lines, BNI and visitor. So for an alumni, you would put that under the for the BNI line. So that's for past members. Or if, let's say, your director consultant referred you business that you'd like to thank BNI for, you put that in the BNI line. And you can also thank visitors that might have utilized your services. And those 2 lines appear on the PALMS report as well. All right, questions. Who's got questions? All right, if there's no additional questions, just a couple of reminders. Again, you can find this video probably in a day or 2 up on youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. You'll be able to find it up there. It will be listed under the October webinars. There's also a ton of educational moments up here, little 3-minute videos that you can use as educational moments in your chapters. I would also love it if you gave us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. We do webinar announcements, updates, and tips and tricks and all sorts of things up here on our Facebook channel as well. And of course, I would a great referral from me would be that if you found this webinar helpful or if you found this format helpful, please do let your other members know about these webinars. We do a full series of webinars about everything about BNI Connect on a monthly basis. So our very next webinar is really for your brand new members that might be in your chapter, and that is Building VCP with BNI Connect. How to fill out your profile is really what that's all about. So please invite them to that webinar. That's going to be this Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We're going to follow that up with the online slips and then the social media aspects and then the member tools and reports, visitors, and finally maintaining your chapter website. And we'll do the whole series again in November. So again, a good referral for me is to please let other people know about these webinars. All right, no more questions have popped in. So I am going to say thank you so very much for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time out and hanging out with me for a little while. Have a wonderful rest of the week, everyone, and happy connecting.